Hey there, welcome to the Astro Psyche. This is your weekly astrology for October 30th through November 5th. So, this week there's a lot of aspects that are involving Uranus, which is the change maker, the radical. And so, this week there are several themes around bringing in new, fresh insights, new energy. And Uranus is all about changing our status quo, our normal way of doing things. And so this week it could be creating changes in your life, and it simply could be a desire to feel more free, to release the things that have been heavy or places where we've been feeling overly responsible. So, a really cool week that I'm excited to share with you. My name is Shauna McGrath. I'm a psychotherapist and astrologer, and this is your weekly astrology forecast. So, let us talk about what's happening. So, first thing that I want to share with you that I think is really cool is we have Venus in Virgo aspecting both Uranus and Neptune. And I like this a lot because Venus connecting with these two planets, Uranus and Neptune, brings in some new energy around imagination, around creativity, around imagining a life and a future that feels vibrant and where there's some movement and some the ability to have Venus relationships to all of the different things in our lives in a way that feels more fresh and enlivening, Uranus. And so I will say that Venus is in Virgo, yes. So Venus is said to be in its fall in the sign of Virgo, which simply means that Venus issues, relationships, money, aesthetics, beauty, sexuality, sensuality, how we feel in a state of calm and harmony and peace, but also the ways that we feel erotic and sensual and enjoying this very sensory life. All of these are Venus themes. So these are going to be done in a Virgo kind of way. And so Virgo is about practicality. It's about following a system or a series of events. It's about being discerning and really using judgment in order to discern, to decide what it is that is helpful versus not helpful, what it is that we value versus not value. And so there can kind of be because also Virgo is ruled by Mercury, which is the planet that rules over logic and intellect. So there can kind of be this sort of logical and headiness or analyticalness to relationships and money and beauty, aesthetics, etc. And at the end of the day, Virgo is really also about healing and purpose and improving a situation through a devoted focus. And so this is a theme that we have for several weeks while Venus is here in Virgo. And so I think that's important to remember that, yes, Venus is in a bit of a challenging situation in this sign, but I think that simply means that it requires a bit more of our nuanced attention when it comes to relationships, when any planet is in a challenging sign. And so all of that being said, I actually really like this transit for us because it's Venus in Virgo, an earth sign, right? Is trine Uranus in Taurus, another earth sign. So a trine is when there is a harmonious flow, there's an ease because the planets are working together and they have this very important commonality, which in this case is the element earth. And Venus and Uranus in themselves, this combo is about creativity, reinvention. There's a desire for play and novelty and things being interesting, things feeling really free and really light. We can contrast this with Saturn energy, which is more about responsibility and duty and sacrifice and containment, whereas Uranus is about breaking open things that have been things that have been contained for so long that it's started to feel stale. And so Uranus is like, okay, where are things feeling stale? Where are things feeling constricting or outdated, or simply we've been doing it this kind of way for so long, and let's try a different way, because Uranus is about questioning the way that we've been doing things. Are we doing this the same way because it actually works? Or is it we've just been doing it because this is the way we've been doing it? And is there a different way that might actually be more suitable? And I think this is also bringing in the Venus in Virgo as well, is the purposefulness of whatever it is that we're doing, especially when it comes to relationships. Now, the other piece of this is that Venus is also opposite Neptune this week, Neptune and Pisces. And this aspect is also very supportive of creativity and being in the flow and any kind of spiritual or personal development. And Neptune is also about illusion, or kind of feeling like you can't really get your footing, sort of feeling like lost or in a fog. And so if there is a challenge with this aspect, it's going to be more around the Neptune themes, around feeling like it's not, like things are not quite clear. Folks who have Venus Neptune in their birth chart, there can be a possibility of feeling like kind of getting swept up or swept away in relationship, and sometimes maybe losing a sense of oneself. That's kind of a theme here. And so I would just watch for this. I would watch and see how you're feeling in relationships, with money situations. Venus is even really connected to our sense of self-worth and how we find value in our own lives and the things that we're doing, and the way that we spend our very precious time and energy. And so I would be watchful for where things feel easy and effortless and free. This is the Venus Uranus. And then where, are there scenarios that come up that maybe where things kind of feel a little foggy and there's some uncertainty, and to let that be. When we have Neptune coming in, there is this sense of sort of being versus doing is very much Neptune territory, and that we can actually make more progress in a situation when we're letting it be for as long as it needs to be, until there's an organic shift or change that happens. Now, life is complicated, and astrology reflects that. So it's kind of interesting this week. We have a little bit of both. We have that Uranus, which is like, yes, there's change and action and movement here, and very rapid change. I'm thinking of the 8 of Wands in the Tarot, that like rapid, quick movement. But then there's also the Neptune, which is like, oh, let's just, kind of sit and chill and hang, like more hanged man energy or hanged person energy in the Tarot. So there might be a little bit of both happening this week. The other part of what's happening this week is, so we have the Sun, Mars, and Mercury all still in Scorpio, right? So we're having the Scorpio experience, the spotlight of awareness, consciousness, the Sun, in themes involving Scorpio. And so Scorpio is so important to remember that Scorpio is ultimately a water sign. So it's ultimately about relationships and emotions and connection and bonding. And so there is a focus in this season around these themes, around deep emotional bonding and relationships and connections that feel meaningful, where there's that something for you to be able to grab onto at a deep level, at an emotional level, a psychological level. And I'll also say, I think that it's not uncommon for um, themes around relationship dynamics to come up when we're having Scorpio season or a Scorpio transit, because Scorpio is also very connected to psychology and human behavior and um, the personal unconscious, like the things that we do that we don't realize that we do, and how the way that we are connects into the way that other people are, and this like very interesting dynamic that gets created when I do something that invokes something in you, and then you respond and that invokes something in me, and then before we know it, we're kind of like in this relational dynamic. So this is very Scorpio, and the sun can bring new awareness and new attention to interpersonal dynamics and the way that we connect and the way that we attach and, the way that we do relationship essentially. And so we have this cluster there in Scorpio, and in there is Mercury, which is the mind, the intellect, the thought process. It's the part of us that thinks more analytically and tries to make sense of things. And this week, Mercury is exactly opposite Uranus in Taurus. So another Uranus connection here. So we have Venus making a harmonious, easy flowing connection to Uranus. Relationships and excitement and innovation around relationships with Venus, Uranus. And then we have Mercury opposite Uranus, which Mercury opposite Uranus is like there's still this theme around new ideas, new awarenesses. Mercury Uranus is so much about like these aha light bulb moments where we're like, oh my gosh, now I see things, or I had a dream, or there was a synchronicity, and there is this lightning bolt of new information, a new way of seeing things. And it's an opposition. So there's a bit of tension here also where there might be something that we realize that maybe feels inconvenient. I don't know if you've had this experience before where it's like you have a new insight and it is clarifying, but it might not always be the insight that you want to receive. That's kind of the energy here. And I think that I'm also thinking about the opposition as being a in-depth psychology, we call this a tension of the opposites, where there are two possibilities or two options. And ideally, if none of those feels like a good fit, or if it feels like we don't want to make a choice between one or the other, we hold that tension as long as we can, and then something else arises out of that space, out of the in-between space. And so I think that it's so interesting too that Mercury's in Scorpio. Like there's this intensity of mind. There's this intensity of focus and a way of thinking about things that is laser-like and piercing, which is Scorpio. And so I think this is a great week to like really, if you want to investigate something, to go deep with it, to see where your thought process leads you. I would watch out for things like rumination, or like this, when we get on this kind of like loop that feels painful, or not necessarily like it feels like there's no fresh movement or energy going. And I think that if that has been a challenge for you lately, if you've noticed that there's kind of this like rumination or spiral thinking where you're kind of like talking or thinking yourself in circles around a scenario, I think that Uranus coming in and opposing Mercury at this point could be a force to sort of disrupt that. And again, like Uranus is not always pleasant. Sometimes it is really uncomfortable or can feel kind of like destabilizing to have this new insight, new awareness. That being said, though, as I'm saying this, it's like, we're coming freshly off of eclipse season. And so there's already been a lot of change and transition, especially at the beginning of eclipse season, where we had that the more striking solar eclipse, the Ring of Fire eclipse in Libra. And so, I'm wondering, I think it depends on what's going on in your life and where you're at, of course, and your personal birth chart, of course. But I'm wondering if this is kind of like maybe putting things into place mentally for you. Now, the other piece of this that I want to share with you too involves Scorpio Taurus as well. So we're really in that like Scorpio Taurus situation still, right? So we have the sun in Scorpio opposite Jupiter this week. So that aspect is exact. And so the sun is our sense of self, our individual identity. It is the principle of individuation in psychology. Individuation being where a person feels like they have their own sense of autonomous self, like that they are a unique individual and that they have a sense of identity and purpose in themselves. And then they can also be a part of the community that they are a part of, whether that is community, family, friends, etc. And so there's an ability to have one's identity as well as be in relationship and maintain that identity when being in relationship. And so, so the sun is so much about the individual self, the ego, the ability to feel purposeful and established and confident. And this is opposite Jupiter in Taurus. And Jupiter is about expanding our perspective, expanding our worldview, inclusion, social justice, philosophy, travel, anything that helps us understand things from a wider perspective or a wider worldview that is more collective and more inclusive of the broader human experience. This is all Jupiter stuff. And so I think that there's something here also around expanding a sense of confidence, expanding a sense of self, feeling like that potential to expand and to feel that vibrancy. Like the sun is also really about vitality and vibrancy and that animating spark, that energy that we get that's not necessarily physical, but like the energy of like when you feel well rested and you feel inspired and you feel excited about life. Like this is the sun. And so Jupiter coming in is expanding our capacity to feel that. So again, this is an opposition, right? So there's some tension here. There is the self, the sun, versus more collective and philosophical themes, which is Jupiter. So there might be a little bit of tension there. And then we are in the waning, winding down phase of the lunar cycle. So we'll have the third quarter moon in Leo on Sunday. And so we're kind of like really coming, the moon is still very bright most of the week because we've had our lunar eclipse, full moon lunar eclipse this past weekend. And so there's this kind of like winding down, sort of like letting the dust settle kind of energy. And then when we have the third quarter moon in Leo, third quarter moon is about coming to terms with things. It has this sense of like closure, of decision points, of looking at, okay, this is what I've done, this is what's happened, and how do I want to conserve my energy over the next week or so before the next new moon. And so I think that like those questions, how do I want to conserve my energy and use my time. That's kind of stuff that might come up over the weekend. And then leading up to this weekend is more of just kind of like letting things become more clear in your mind, letting the dust settle. Yeah, kind of like a processing. I feel like there's a lot of processing that's happening this week, especially in the post-eclipse situation. Okay, so I'm going to pull 3 tarot cards for you, and I also pulled an animal card this week just because I felt like it. So this is the animal card is from Colette Baron Reed's animal deck, and I pulled the mouse card. They have little messages here at the bottom, and this is the mouse card. It says, tend to the small things. It's very mouse-like. And so take that how it resonates. This is card number 40. So if you're paying attention to the numerology, I think it's really interesting that it's card 40 because the 4 is very much about foundations and home, and mice, they live so close to the ground. Like there's this kind of also like survival, nesting, like there is this like really taking care, and even says tending to the small things. So that's important this week. Whenever I think of animals, I think of animals as like the more instinctual parts of self, the parts of self that it's not really about logic. There's kind of more of a feeling tone to it. And so that's the way that I'm reading these as I'm looking at it. It's like the tarot is the more practical piece. And then the animal is more about the emotions, the inner world, and even like our experiences that come from our pre-verbal self. If that makes sense. Okay, so okay, interesting cards. So first card is the moon. And this is my flower deck. So all of the cards are flowers. So the moon in tarot is about the unconscious. It's about the parts of self that we don't know that we don't know. And the moon, in tarot, the moon I usually see is like very connected to the collective unconscious. And so it might be personal unconscious things, but it's kind of like there's something here that's almost humanitarian or collective, or something in the unconscious psyche of the community that you're in. This flower is the Queen of Night. Really beautiful. It's got this like white blossom, and it almost looks kind of like a cactus flower. So, so when the moon comes up, there can also be a sense of confusion or fear or trepidation. There's kind of like this can be this fear of the unknown. And the moon usually comes up for me when it's like there's something that I don't know yet. There is more information here. There's more to be revealed. And it is revealed through an inner journey that cannot be rushed. So we're going to go back to this. This feels very Venus Neptune to me. It feels very Neptune in general. And then I pulled the 9 of Wands. And this is the Inula and the willow tree. So the 9 of Wands is about stamina, sticking with things. The 9 of Wands usually comes like at the last trials of a journey. It's like we've been through a thing, We're kind of like getting our bearings. There's like more that needs to be done on the journey, but it's like at the last legs of the journey. And it's a reminder to gather yourself and to do the thing that you need to do. And sometimes it's a message to not give up, to stick with the thing. I actually want to read the guidebook for this particular one because I'm feeling called to do that. So the 9 of Wands. The wands are also about our passion and drive and desire and kind of like our enthusiasm for life and what propels us forward in the world. And the 9 is so much about like this sense of culmination towards something. In Tarot, we have the ace through the 10. And so 9 is kind of like, it's like almost there. So in this deck, this card is about self-defense, suspicion, challenges that come from like really being in like a fighting or like a almost kind of like PTSD-ish kind of feeling, like you've been through something that has been really challenging, possibly even traumatic. And now here you are trying to sort of like make your way through that, through the aftermath of that. It's also associated with stubbornness, a sense of danger after a battle has already ended, readiness to defend one's current situation, resisting challenges, and old fears. Okay, yeah. So this is kind of what I'm feeling. It's like the moon, there's something unconscious here that's going on, and it is connected to what it is that you've been going through. And so there's something here that's being carried forward, that is maybe like fear or a response, or there's the past that's being carried forward. And the third card, so we're going to go back to that in a second. The third card that I pulled is the Emperor card. So very striking. This is the peony flower. So the Emperor card is about inner power, authority, conviction, like really having this strong presence. And there tends to be more of like a leadership, authority, like it's really about having influence also here. And it tends to be more connected to yang energy or masculine energy. So like we're contrasting that. This is the emperor. There's also the empress. And so I think it's really interesting here that there's the moon card. There's such a softness to this card. And the moon card is so much more connected to the parts of psyche that we can't really pin down. The unconscious is something that it's like we don't even know it. Like once we know it, it is conscious. Like we can't ultimately know the unconscious, because once we know the unconscious, that means it's no longer unconscious, it is conscious. And so it's kind of like very slippery, so to speak. So there's something here with the moon card. There's something that we don't know. There's maybe a little bit of fear here going on. We don't know the full story about the situation, whatever it is. And then in a practical way, this is connected to the trials that we've more recently been through, the things that we're bringing with us. We could say that's our baggage. We could say that's our early experiences. We could say it's our life journey, whatever it is. We've all, life is challenging, of course, for all of us. And there's something here that's being brought forward that involves the moon card that that we're bringing forward. And through processing this, like understanding, I think it's really interesting that the Nine of Wands, it's so all of the wands in this deck, there is the willow branches. And in this Nine of Wands, the branches are kind of like in this, they're like braided together. So they're kind of like woven together. And I'm getting this image of untangling and like pulling apart the willow branches to see what is actually going on, because it's like everything is like all connected, and it's like, okay, what's overlapping? How is this all like, how does one piece connect to another piece in your life? And that by doing that, that there is empowerment that comes. I think the Emperor coming at the end is really very encouraging and very empowering, and a really sweet message that says that, yeah, like there's something here where there's like a little bit of uncertainty or insecurity. There's maybe some fear, you know, there's something tender and vulnerable here that's going on, and that it's connected very understandably to the challenges that you've been through. And then like processing those challenges, like looking at things and really not abandoning yourself, like being with yourself in whatever way that is appropriate for you, like whatever that looks like. And then that brings this sense of inner strength, that brings the ability to sit and to stand proud and strong. Like, look how proud this flower is. It's just like, yeah, I am here. And like, it's just very vibrant. That like inner vibrancy is coming in through the Emperor card. And then, you know, we can bring this back to the original animal, which is the mouse, which is about looking at, sometimes it's the small things that really make a big difference. So I hope you found this helpful. I am wishing you such a wonderful week. I'm sending you lots of love, and I hope this week is filled with ease and joy and even some exciting surprises for you. I will see you next week. All right. Bye.